The Crimson Tide are hosting a stacked event this weekend, and we have got to break it down. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from y'all. Hop down to the comments. Give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Are you excited that the first of Alabama's super big recruiting weekends is here? And let me know what you're thinking. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification, because I do constant college football content, and you don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoy that content, be sure to like, comment down below, because those interactions are massive to content creators such as myself. But with all that being said, let's break this down, because the Crimson Tide are really taking advantage of official visits being able to happen. They're taking advantage of getting kids in for unofficial visits, just this whole dead period being lifted. Nick Saban and staff are absolutely looking to get as many kids as they can come in, and this weekend is going to be a star-studded event. So today I wanted to talk about a few different prospects that the Crimson Tide will be hosting this weekend that are huge names. And first and foremost, we have to talk about the Crimson Tide five-star quarterback, Ty Simpson, because Ty Simpson has been being a phenomenal recruiter for the University of Alabama. And that's not even to speak about what he can do on the football field. This kid is incredibly talented. His ability to throw on the run is something that is incredibly coveted in today's college football game. The ability to keep defenses off balance, a very talented passer from the pocket, but getting him outside the pocket isn't going to affect his game in the way you would hope, because he is just as effective outside as he is inside. The talent is there. So prospects are going to want to play with a Ty Simpson, which makes it awesome that so many of these talented prospects are here, and that Ty Simpson keeps coming back to recruit and to try and get this Alabama Crimson Tide class rolling, because we saw this last summer. The Crimson Tide class started a little slow and then absolutely took over, and I have a feeling that's exactly what we're set for this year. But now I want to talk about some defensive guys, because not long ago I got to talk to Bryce Anderson's dad, Jay Anderson, about their upcoming trip to Alabama. He told me that they were very much looking forward to it, and that Alabama has been a really constant in their recruiting process. So having him on campus this weekend is going to be big for not only the Crimson Tide getting a highly coveted DB prospect into campus this weekend, but it's going to be big for other recruits as well. Seeing the possibility of a very talented kid like Bryce Anderson come in there just makes it a bigger weekend altogether, especially when we're keeping our minds on that defensive back room. And over social media over the past week, the big name you're probably all wondering about is Domani Jackson, the current USC commit, the five-star cornerback, the number 2 corner in the nation, will be taking a trip to Alabama this weekend, which is a big win for the Crimson Tide. The Crimson Tide are going to be working very hard to flip Domani Jackson, but this is going to be an uphill battle. This kid goes to Mater Dei. He's a California kid, and USC has done a really good job of recruiting this year. I mean, we've talked about it. Clay Helton and his staff, though we have questions about them moving forward, about what's going to happen on the field, they are recruiting at a very high level right now. And Domani Jackson is an individual who is a product of the recruiting that they are doing right now. We can see Corey Foreman, Domani Jackson, and then the other day, five-star defensive tackle Michael Williams committing to the Trojans. Now, this has to go on the field. There has to be a productive season for the Trojans in order to capitalize on this, but right now they are recruiting very well. So it will be an uphill battle for Alabama, but fortunately, if you are an Alabama fan, you have Nick Saban, and you have incredible production that Alabama has put out from that defensive back position into the NFL. Being coached by Nick Saban is something that you hear a lot of these defensive backs talk about, that is just something that is so hard to turn down. We've heard it time and time again from these prospects. Once they talk to Saban, it is always a little bit harder to say no to the Crimson Tide, especially if you are a DB, because that is his area of expertise, and he is the GOAT for a reason. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Alabama is able to utilize this visit from Domani Jackson. If they're able to get in a really solid pitch, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. The Crimson Tide have got to feel good about, at the very least, getting him on campus, because that is a big deal, and they're going to be working overtime to flip him. But the last defensive back prospect I want to talk about is Earl Little Jr., and Earl Little Jr. is one of the most phenomenally talented prospects in this whole cycle. Make no doubt about it. The Crimson Tide would love nothing more than to capitalize on some of the defensive backs they have coming in this weekend, because this is a stacked weekend for them in that defensive back category. We've already talked about Bryce Anderson, Domani Jackson, and now talking about Earl Little Jr. all in the same weekend. You couldn't ask for much more if you're looking for the Crimson Tide to pick up a commitment from from a defensive back, and they would love it to be Earl Little Jr. Earl Little Jr., we've seen tapes coming out of the American Heritage practices, and he has been incredible in his capacity up there. Can't wait to see how he does this season, and the Crimson Tide have him very, very high on their board. This is someone who we are going to be watching very closely going forward. The last name we need to talk about is probably the name in the class of 2023, Arch Manning. Arch Manning will be visiting the Crimson Tide this weekend, and that's something we're going to be keeping a part of. We've been keeping a part of wherever Arch Manning has gone. The Crimson Tide are one of the institutions that look to be in a good position for Arch Manning moving forward, but this is a very long battle, one that will not be decided anytime soon, if I had to guess. But just the fact that the Crimson Tide have reportedly been in such a good position, you have to feel good if you're a Crimson Tide fan, but this is one we have to watch going forward. Hop down to the comments, let me know who you're excited about that is visiting the Alabama Crimson Tide this weekend, and which prospects you're really looking forward to seeing and hoping that the Crimson Tide can get a commitment out of this weekend. That's it. See ya.